Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kay Hirschfeld, the Transitions of Care Coordinator in the Stroke Program. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope this finds you thawing out and warming up from the cold weather we've had lately. So our agenda today will focus on peer-to-peer support programs. We'll hear from Carol Droegemueller, Stroke Coordinator at Regents Hospital, who will tell us about their wonderful and rewarding Sharegivers Peer Visitor Program. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping items to review regarding your participation in this webinar. Sorry about that. So as usual, your lines have been muted upon entry. I'll be monitoring the chat box. Please feel free to type questions in the chat box throughout the webinar. Instructions for how to access and utilize the chat feature are listed here on this slide. We'll save all questions until the end of the presentation. And if we happen to run out of time, please don't worry. We will address your questions in a follow-up email. So as mentioned, we have Carol Droegemueller with us today to talk about Regents Hospital Sharegivers Stroke Peer Visiting Program. Some of you have already know Carol, but if you don't, Carol is the Stroke Program Coordinator for Regents Hospital and Comprehensive Stroke Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. She has been with Regents Hospital since 2011. Carol is also one of our site reviewers for Acute Stroke Ready Hospital designation and a disease-specific reviewer for the Joint Commission, Primary Stroke and Ortho. Additionally, she serves on the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance Board and the Minnesota Stroke Association Board. So please welcome Carol Droegemueller. I will now pass the presenter role on to Carol. Did you get that, Carol?
I guess I do have it, but I was looking for my notes, but I don't see for some reason. Oh wait, maybe I have them now. I will just advance the slides and hello everyone. Thank you, Kay, for the invitation to speak today. Let me see if I can advance my slide. Nope, I don't think you handed it to me because my arrows aren't working over here.
Give it a try now, Carol.
Okay. There we go. Okay. Am I going the wrong direction? I am. Okay, here we go. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so just to start, I appreciate very much the opportunity to speak today, but like so many of my favorite projects that I've done in my career, it starts with a question, a seemingly innocent question out of the blue, and this one was, have you given any thought to having a stroke peer visiting program at Regents? And that's all it took to embark on this wonderful journey that I'm going to share with you today. So, first of all, I'm going to give you, I think I was asked more to focus on the how-tos, how to set up a program so that you might consider establishing one in your own hospitals. So I'm going to look at recruitment, orientation, supportive roles, tools that we use to guide the visits, and how to evaluate the program. And I'm going to use the backstory about how we got started and how we modified and personalized the program to suit our needs here at Regents and how we select our peer visitors and orient them. I'll also give you some nuts and bolts of the resources that we use and the metrics over the years and how the program continues to flourish. There are still some opportunities for improvement in this program, and so I'll share some thoughts that I have around that as well. So in the literature, we know this particular author specifically talked about the benefits that are derived from stroke patients when in the hospital they get a contact or have a peer visit while they're in the hospital. We know from lots of different settings that making a connection with someone that's going through the same thing that you are, if it could be a disease process, it could be a life milestone such as the birth of a child or raising teenagers, or even life journey kinds of things like transitioning to a new school or a job. Having support and talking to someone about it is helpful. So that's what we based it on. We really didn't do any specific needs assessment for it. It was sort of a wish list item that I had as I moved into the role as a stroke program coordinator here, and I really didn't find any guide or workbook or handbook so that when I was looking to start something like that, so I just pushed it onto the back burner. There were other things that were priorities, and so I just didn't approach it. But then, about 9 years ago, someone from the American Heart Association, American Stroke Association, who was at Regions for a photo opportunity, some unrelated, approached me and asked if we'd be interested in doing a peer visiting program at Regions, and I said, yes. And so what it gave me was they actually had a curriculum and a print material book that they shared with me, and we started from that book. Let's see. This is the Sharegiver curriculum cover page. It is, unfortunately, for those of you that are going to be so excited after you hear about this program today, it is out of print right now, but I think they're looking to print another version in the near future, and I'm happy to share some of the resources that I've used from it with you today. So it was, ironically, this program took me back to my past. It was begun by Judy Johnson, whom I knew from my years when I was at North Memorial, and Lindsay McDivitt, and they created and piloted a program first in Minnesota using, if you've heard of the I Can Cope series from the American Cancer Society, they use that as a model, and they developed this specific for stroke. It was then copyrighted in 2006 by the American Heart Association, American Stroke Association, and so it really was intended to be a training program for stroke survivors and their family members, family and friends. But it came with 12 chapters, 1-hour sessions that were intended to be given to the participants, and there was really no way that we were going to be able to devote 12 hours of training to this endeavor. So we had originally did a couple of hours, a couple Saturdays, 2 4-hour sessions with lunch included. That was our very first time, and then later, subsequently, we did only one Saturday. It was getting shorter and shorter as we kind of determined what the key elements were. And now, at the bottom of the slide, you see it's really a one-on-one volunteer orientation with me, and I have access of a recorded session from some speakers in the past that I will share with the interested persons. And then I pass the baton to the experienced peer visitors that we have at the hospital for shadowing experiences and learning how to be on your own. The guest speakers that we arranged for orientation originally started out to include a stroke survivor, but we no longer do that segment. But we did retain the stroke physician and the chaplain segments. So there are 2 45-minute sessions that were recorded. One is the stroke medical director giving some basic pieces about stroke, ischemic stroke, hemorrhagic stroke, what acute interventions are available, and then secondary prevention. And then the chaplain enters in and introduces the participants to something called Aid It. You may know this as a tool, and I will give you some more details about the Aid It tool, but that's the tool that we use here at Regions to guide our interactions with patients and families here, and so he introduces that topic to the participants. And then we have a very robust volunteer program at Regions, and there is a volunteer coordinator who coordinates all of that. And so persons who are in the hospital for volunteering need to go through a basic quiz, background check, fingerprints, employee health details, and all of that is enfolded into the process for becoming a sharegiver at Regions. Oh, I thought these would come up as one at a time, but that's all right. I will just share some of the things that these papers flew in when I had designed the presentation, and now they're just stuck on the front. But originally, what you can't see, there is a map of Regions that I have in a folder. So all these pieces of paper that are on the slide, I have put into a folder for my first visit with the potential volunteer. They've expressed interest to me, and I have met them and spent maybe an hour, and I kind of just get a gut feeling whether or not they're going to make a good peer visitor. And so I introduce them to some of the basic pieces of what the program looks like before I do the full orientation after they've passed and done all the volunteer requirements. So there is, in this folder that I put together for them, they have the map, they have a peer visit guide that tells them all the steps that we've developed at Regions, what they're supposed to do first, second, and third when they come to the hospital. I also have a guideline for how to guide their conversations. So we really don't want this to be a visit about them, or we don't want them to be providing any advice. It's really more about listening and inspiring them to work hard and recover to the best of their ability. So experienced volunteers, we were lucky enough to, when we started and had our first orientation, I will just stray from this a little bit, what I was going to say here, but the first group of volunteers that we got were a result of a patient list that we created, a mailing list that we created that was of recent stroke survivors, that hopefully we filtered it to not include the expired individuals, and we mailed it out to a group and asked for interest, including, told them that we were having an orientation. Are you interested in coming and learning more about how to be a peer visitor? And we got a decent response. We set our threshold at 5 persons was our minimum group to put together those 2 Saturdays together, and we got 5 persons that were interested. I will let you know there were some challenges to that process, though. There were some persons who received letters that wrote back to me and said, I don't know why I got this letter. I really didn't have a stroke, or someone else who was disappointed that it went to a expired loved one. So it wasn't a perfect process, and I am a little bit more careful before I send out a mass mailing now, but that was how we got started. And then once the 5 new persons were oriented, they have become our core group of persons, and they have notes that they share with the new persons as they come on. So this is some of the recommendations that they have. Just be yourself. Use their name on the whiteboard that's in the room, and this isn't a session about talking about yourself. And the best ways to get the conversation going is just say, John will say, I am a stroke survivor. Is it okay if I come and visit for a few minutes? And he said he's hardly ever turned down. They almost always invite him in. And then he asks, do you remember what happened? And that's usually all it takes to get the conversation going. So they're a little nervous, too, to start, but once you get the conversation going, it works. And it's always important to validate the feelings that are uncovered during the conversation. We had a period of time where we got staff ready for what was it going to mean to have volunteers on our stroke units. That maybe wasn't something they saw very often otherwise, and so we put some table tents together on the unit to describe what the process was, let them know that there were going to be some stroke volunteers on the unit, and they'd be visiting patients, and they have permission to be there. And then we developed a process for getting the patient list and learning who it is are the right persons to visit. The health unit coordinator is printing this list and then handing it to the charge nurse who reviews the list and says, these are good persons to visit, these are the ones, and circles the ones that they want the peer visitor to visit, and then they are on their own to go see if they can make those visits. And then I use some tracking. I have them sign in at the unit so that I can know how many visits they've made, that sort of thing. We started off here at Regions. We have a uniform that our volunteers have to wear. They wear red shirts with black pants, and we customized the shirt that the volunteer wears to include the words Sharegivers, so they have their own shirt that we purchased with some program funding that we received when we partnered originally with the American Heart Association, American Stroke Association to get the program off and running. And I now have, those funds are all depleted now, but I will still now enfold into the program the purchase of new shirts for volunteers when they do come to volunteer. One of the other costs associated with the program is travel for the volunteers, and some of the volunteers come by bus, some come Metro Mobility, some come in their personal vehicle and use valet parking, and we have purchased some passes for the bus and for Metro Mobility to just offset some of the expenses they might have that might be barriers to coming here. Other resources that we have for the volunteers, there is a couple of our volunteers that come from a good long distance, and they wanted to ensure that there would be stroke patients here when they arrived and not waste the trip. And it does happen occasionally, and we don't have a great system for ensuring that there is going to be a stroke person here. I will just tell you we are busy enough that typically there are stroke patients here to visit. But we also developed an online scheduling process so that you can remotely sign in and say you're going to be there on Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock, and then other stroke volunteers who are asked to just randomly come whenever they feel like it. I do not coordinate a schedule for them. They are just asked to come once or twice a month, and so it could happen that someone had visited just in the morning and you're there in the afternoon, and that person is getting 2 visits, but they're unique, and we've just allowed that to happen. But we have this way of scheduling now. They also receive a cafeteria voucher they can use on that same day that they visit. They can use to get coffee or offset the cost of lunch. And then we created a little one-page stroke support group handout that is a leave behind. If the person is sleeping, they can just write a note and say, I was here. Some of the positive feedback, I'll let you, I have a video that's going to come up, and I want you guys to be able to hear it. We're going to see if this works, but most of the feedback has been positive from everybody, the nursing staff, the patients and families, and the peer visitors themselves. It's really a win-win for everybody. And I'm going to pass the ball or have Nikki or Kay take it and show you a video.
Sure thing, guys. This is Nikki. I'm going to take that roll back from you here, Carol, and share my screen. We've tried this a few times. The audio may not be ideal. We are going to share the link in the follow-up email, and I just put it in the chat here as well. But let me pull up that website and play the video.
I work with the people as soon as they've had the stroke, if not with them, with their families. And so I'll see them in the very critical phase and in the step downs, or step ups if you want to look at it that way. And then I will see them again on the rehab division, and it's absolutely wonderful to just see the progress that people make.
We're all in this together, sharing what we have gone through. It's scary, and it's best gone through together.
You can clearly see that they've taken some encouragement, some hope from seeing a stroke survivor. Regardless of what I say, the mere presence of a stroke survivor is the message of hope.
One of the biggest things, I guess, that I learned, a very independent person, and one thing that I learned was you really need a lot of other people in your life, and you really have to count on a lot of other people in your life.
I have come a long way in the 3 years since I had my stroke. But knowing that, I'm not ready to give up growing.
There is life after stroke. The doctors and nurses can tell you, well, you're going to see improvements. The swellings are going to go down. You get some functionality back. But when you see a stroke survivor walking around and they say, well, yeah, I was just like you, there's a message of hope there that kind of nobody else can give. And I've seen people just really grab onto that encouragement, that message. They see me come in. Sure, I'm limping. I can't lift my hand very well, but I can tell my story and say, look, I'm back at work, and here I'm visiting you. There is life after stroke.
Okay, thanks everyone. Can you hand me back the ball? Or yep, there we go. Okay, let's see.
Yeah, just one moment, Carol. I'm going to give it back to you.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Should be good to go.
Okay, so here's a photo of some of our volunteers. These two guys are quite the pair. They're a little like Abbott and Costello. They have a routine. They banter back and forth. One absolutely can't drive, and the other has offered to bring him to the visits, and they come just about weekly and visit patients. When they get here, they split up and visit patients separately, but they were featured in a newsletter recently, and so I just wanted to share that. This is a depiction in numbers in the quantitative ways that we have impacted stroke care here using a peer visiting program, but it's not really qualitative. It's just giving you numbers that, this is how many caregiver peer visitors we've had annually in each of those respective years, that the cumulative time that they have volunteered based on our sign-in, sign-out process, and then how many average hours per week. So we get, anywhere from 3 to 6 hours a week of volunteer time here from those volunteers. And then on the very last column on the right is the number of patient visits by best estimate. And we just know that they are serving many, many persons that weren't getting this inspirational message before. And that 2020 time, of course, is not reflective because the volunteers were not able to be here after the stay-at-home order. Impact and recognition, we do, because we have this great volunteer program that serves other folks all throughout the hospital. We have, pet therapy and people that meet and greet people when they arrive at the hospital. Regions does an annual recognition. They have a picnic and a program, and they sometimes provide a river cruise as an event, and so our volunteers are part of that process, and so they feel really a part of the team. But then individually, I will personally write thank you notes and field phone calls with them, tally what their personal contribution has been. I've gotten to know each and every one of them, and they are my friends, and I am theirs. So how do we sustain the program? It's mostly word of mouth. Quite honestly, probably the most common reason that people are interested in being a peer visitor is because they were visited by someone while they were in the hospital and they want to be that person. They derived so much inspiration from it that they want to be that person going forward. The only thing that we ask is that they are about 12 to 18 months out of their stroke time onset, because we want them to be in their best recovery period as possible and not be in the middle of therapy themselves. But other ways that we get volunteers, the neurologists in their outpatient clinic visits are sometimes suggesting to patients that this would be a good volunteer opportunity, that they see that they could benefit from that. And periodically we'll send out mailings again and see if there are any interested persons, if we feel like the cadre is dwindling a little bit, because we have had some attrition. And then we post it on our website. You'll see the link when we send out this presentation later. And then during stroke month, we'll also have e-messaging on our boards here describing volunteer opportunities at the hospital. But some of the opportunities that I see through the years that we have had this program is that we have this quantifying information about how many hours and how many patients, but we really don't have any qualitative information on patient outcomes. And I'm not exactly sure what that would look like, but I'm thinking that we could probably begin or embark on looking at what's satisfaction for the peer visitor, what's the satisfaction for the recipient somehow, maybe look at length of stay, participation in rehab, outcomes at 90 days. There maybe is some difference, who knows, about the person who's visited versus the person that is not. And then we have heard back from the peer visitors that they really struggle with patients with aphasia and how to be with them in the room, and so perhaps there's an opportunity to just have topics of special interest to them at a lunch and learn at another date. So takeaways, I think peer visitor program is important, and I really firmly believe that it has been beneficial to our patients and to the peer visitors that have volunteered. It's inspirational. We were able to adapt successfully this program that was quite hefty and make it a useful program here at a low cost, that the recruiting and the orientation doesn't need to be really involved, and we can create a simple process to getting on board and started. The key roles are the supervisor, who is me, in the volunteer office at our hospital, and then this tool that the chaplain introduced, the acknowledge, introduce, duration, explain how long you're going to be there, why you're there, and thank them for the opportunity to speak with them is the tool that we guide our visits with. And then quantify the impact, tell the story, let people know how you are impacting others. So thank you very much. I'm happy to field any questions if you have them, and here's my contact information if you'd like to do it privately later.
Carol, one of the questions is with inpatient lengths of stay so short and acute nature, how effective is the peer stroke visit while the patient is still in the hospital?
There are just always patients in our hospital. They could be on day 1, day 2, day 3, getting ready to go. So I leave it up to the unit charge to delineate who the right person is to visit when the peer visitors show up that day. But some patients are getting 2 visits, some patients are getting no visits, and some patients are getting a visit right before they go, or maybe on the first morning. It just is random.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? If so, please type them into the chat box. Or you can push #6 to, or *6 to unmute your lines.
I will just offer, as just another detail, we do have a peer visiting program in the rehab unit, because we have inpatient rehab here, but this program is separate from that. It is an inpatient side experience, and the coordinator of the rehab side pairs the person up with a stroke survivor, and I don't coordinate any of that. The visitors just come randomly on a day, and they visit patients who are there in the hospital on that particular day, and I don't schedule it.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I'm sorry I went over.
That's okay. It was a very good program, and I love the videos. So thank you. We appreciate you sharing this wonderful, rewarding program with us. And it sounds like you really take good care of your volunteers, so that's nice to hear why they're sticking with you. So, yeah, we are kind of going over in time. So if you have any questions, you can always send that to us. You can put them in the chat box, and we can answer them in the follow-up email. There's also contact hours available. So for 0.5 contact hours, 0.5 contact hours, you complete the evaluation. We have a link to the evaluation in the chat box, so please use that link to fill out the survey. And we'll also include it in our follow-up email that we'll send later today. So thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. All right, take care and stay well. Thanks. Bye-bye.